कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे कलये सुंदराकारं सदैकप्रियदर्शनम् अज्ञाननाशकं देवं सद्गुरुं मुरलीधरं मुरलीमण्डितकरकमलं मुनिजनमोहनं व्यत्यस्तपादं वनमालाधारिणं प्रेमभक्तमण्डलनित्यकीर्तितं श्रीप्रेमिकवरदम् आश्रयेऽहम् ज्ञानवैराग्यसम्पूर्णान् हरिभक्तिपरायणान् पूर्वाचार्यम् अहं वन्दे सम्प्रदायः प्रवर्तकान् मन्दस्मितमुखाम्बोजं महनीयगुणार्णवं मधुराभाषितं शान्तं सर्वभूतदयापरं भक्तवात्सल्यजलधिं परमानन्दविग्रहं ज्ञानानन्दं प्रपन्नोऽस्मि निर्मलज्ञानसिद्धये आनन्दम् आनन्दकरं प्रसन्नं ज्ञानस्वरूपं निजबोधयुक्तं योगीन्द्रमीड्यं भवरोगवैद्यं श्रीमद्गुरुं नित्यम् अहं नमामि। गोपिका जीवनस्मरणं गोविन्द गोविन्द सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। राधे राधे। By the causeless mercy of our divine couple Madhuri Sakhi Sameta Shri Premikavarada Thakurji, and by the Avyaja Kripa of our Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Maharani Shri Shri Muralidhar Swamiji, we are going to look at a very special Mahan's Charitram today. We actually sang one of his songs right now, which is सीतापति रामचंद्र की जय, राधापति कृष्ण चंद्र की जय, गौरीपति चंद्रचूड़ की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, तपोवन ज्ञानानंद की जय, तपोवन ज्ञानानंद की जय. So we are going to look at that Mahatma who is called Tapovana Jnanananda Swami. Tapovana Jnanananda Swami, most of us, yes, everybody knows this mudra, and I'm sure all of us have been to a Nama Sankirtanam, and in a Divya Nama Sankirtanam there is I cannot even think of one Divya Nama Sankirtanam that can be complete without singing one of his compositions. And we have seen Swami's photo, which we see here everywhere. I think all of you know JKD Anna. In his bhajans, you will see Swami's poster everywhere. And Jnanananda Swami is a very special Mahan, in the sense that he's a Mahan where we don't know much about, because he himself didn't want to reveal much. So in Mahatmas there are many types, and we have seen this before. There are two types of Mahans. One type of Mahatma does tapas, they do tapas, but they are not physically present. So there are two things which has to be done. One is someone has to acquire the tapas, so that whatever they say can get fulfilled. And the other thing is the Mahatma actually has to fulfill the work. So very rarely we see both of them together. Our Gurunatha is an example. He did tapas in his earlier time. If we look at Guru Maharaj's Charitram, in the earlier time Guru Maharaj used to do incessant tapas. And now we see that all of his avatara karyam, establishing Namadwar and spreading Nama, which is the avatara karyam, is both done by one Mahatma, which is a special case. And Jnanananda Swami is the same, in the sense that Jnanananda Swami did incessant tapas, and he was a beloved Guru Maharaj for all of his disciples. And this Mahatma was so great that there is a beautiful quote by Tirumular. It says, Yar arivar adan agalamum neelamum per ariyada perum chudarundro adan ver ariyamai vidambugindrene. So Tirumular actually uses this quote to describe the Brahma Tattva. And Jnanananda Swami was actually always compared to as the Brahma Tattva. And a very beautiful example is Shishi Anna himself. Shishi Anna, who we all know, is our Parama Guru, which is our Guru Maharaj's Guru. He himself had an experience where when he was in Patashala, there was this one time when they had to do Tiruvai. Tiruvai means repetition of the Vedas. So when we learn Veda, you learn it once and you repeat it a few times. Then you do Tiruvai, which means you repeat it about 100 times in a cycle, which is a fortnight. And once you do that, you are assumed that you will fully grasp it and you will never forget that for the rest of your life. That is what doing a Tiruvai is. And in Anna's class, his classmates, they were, let's say it was a 2-story building. And Anna's classmates and all were in the basement. And they were about to go to class. So they had a class where they had to recite the Vedas. So they were about to go to the class. And Jnanananda Swami was there. The beauty about Jnanananda Swami is nobody can actually predict or tell his actual age. Everybody has a different estimate for Jnanananda Swami's age. Some people say 500 years, some people say 100 years, some people... Because for a Mahatma, for us, our age is denoted by what time we are born and what time we die. The period between that is what our lifespan is. But for a Mahatma, the lifespan cannot be fully derived because if we look at Raghavendra Swami's example, Raghavendra Swami actually 3 Jyotishyas, which means astrologers, came in to actually say what is the lifespan of Raghavendra Swami. And 3 of them were sitting together. They were in the same complex, same place. They were sitting together and they calculated it. One person said his age is 100 years. His lifespan is 100 years. Another person said his lifespan is 300 years. Then another astrologer said his lifespan is 600 years. Now these Shishyas, Raghavendra Swami Shishyas were listening to this. They said, what foolish astrologers, all of them are sitting together and they are still deriving it wrong. They must have not gone to some good Jyotisha school, because how can all of them get, it's above that, it's almost 100, 200 higher. Everyone predicted 100, 200 higher than what the other one did. So they are chattering amongst themselves. When Raghavendra Swami comes in and he says, Enna Sultala, which means he asks them, did they do it? And the Shishyas reply, yes Swami, one Jyotisha said 100 years, one said 300, one said 600. He said, wow, they all did a great job. Give them Sambhavana and make them leave. These Shishyas were very confused because all of them calculated a different value. So how can all of them be combined? He did not do any averaging or anything. It was just 100, 300, 600. Raghavendra Swami then tells them that my age is not just one number. The age of this body is 100 years, the age of my granthas is 300 years, and the age which I will be in Samadhi till is 600 years. So, for a Mahatma, since they are living eternally, we can never actually tell how old they are. And that is very true for our Jnanananda Swami, because everybody we can think of in history has had experience with Jnanananda Swami. And he has lived in the time of Vallalar, he has lived in the time of Bharadiyar, he has lived in the time of Shishi Anna, he is still living. So it is very, very hard to actually describe what time period he is. And that is true for every Mahatma. It's that we say their lifespan according to their Sthula Shariram, but Sukshma, which means in the higher form, in the more minute form, which is subtle form, which we cannot sense normally, they are always living. And an example is if we go to Govindapuram, since I see Balaji, when we go to Govindapuram, if we go to our Bodhendra Swami's Adhishtanam, we can still hear the Ramanama. And Bodhendra Swami is still living. So our Mahatma's age can never be classified. But for Jnanananda Swami, what is special is, nothing about him can actually be classified. Normally when we talk about the Charitram of a Mahatma, like for example, if we take our Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have a very structured story. We know that Mahaprabhu was in Navadvipam. His name was Nimai. His Purvashrama name was Nimai. He was He was a Veda Pandita, he was an instructor. We all know the story of how he went with Digvijay Pandita. We know the entire story. It has a structure. We know what's his birth name. We know where he was born, who were his parents, etc. But with Jnanananda Swami, we know that information, but none of that can be actually, we can say with some sort of accuracy. In statistics, we say with a standard deviation of plus or minus 5, with a confidence interval of 95%, we can predict that his age, he was born to this couple at this time. He was not born, first of all, which we will get into later. So he was found by this couple at some point, and everything is we can place a confidence interval, but we cannot 100% say that was the truth, because Swami, Jnanananda Swami, whenever the devotees like us, we always want to talk about our Guru Maharaj, and we always want to spread his charitram. Like that, Jnanananda Swami's devotees also were very eager to know what is the charitram. And one such bhakta was Hiva Jagannathan. Hiva Jagannathan, his mama was actually he was a scholar in Tamil, and he used to write for this magazine called Kalaimagal, which I know most of you are familiar with, I'm assuming, Kalaimagal. So he used to write for that magazine Kalaimagal, and he was a great bhakta of Jnanananda Swami. He really wanted to show the world, it's a very common thing, right? We all want to show how our Guru Maharaj is, what is his charitram, how great he is. We always want to express that as bhaktas. But Jnanananda Swami he never revealed it. To some people, when they asked, he used to say, can you see the shadow? You cannot, right? After there's no marking after the birds fly away. And he sends them away. And other people, if they ask, he says, if I knew that you were about to ask this, I would have noted down all my history with pen and paper. He used to give very jovial responses to all of the bhaktas, but he never revealed what is his actual charitram. And this one story is a great example, because this Kiva Jagannathan, he wanted to write an article about Jnanananda Swami and his life history. And he was a contemporary, obviously he was a bhakta when Jnanananda Swami was in his Stula Sharira. So this Kiva Jamama, he goes to Tapovanam. Tapovanam is the Adhishtanam of our Jnanananda Swami. It is in Tamil Nadu, and it is near Tirukkoilur. Most of you know the Divya Kshetram, Tirukkoilur. It is near that. It is near Tirukkoilur. So that is Tapovanam. That is Jnanananda Swami's Adhishtanam. And this Kiva Jamama, he went to Tapovanam. He was a busy man. He was a scholar, as I said. He used to do a lot of work. He used to do peer review for many of the top level Tamil articles, and he used to write a lot himself. He used to do a lot of Kainkarya, so he was doing a lot of things. But for this reason, for knowing his Guru's Charitra, he specifically took 3 days off. 1 week, he took 3 days off, and he said, this time I will go and understand what our Guru's Charitram is. And he went to Tapovanam. When he went to Tapovanam, he was prepared. He was a very renowned reporter and journalist. So he prepared all of his questions. When were you born? Where were you born? Who were your parents? He noted down all of the questions before he went to Jnanananda Swami. And once he went, just like us, he was gasping for words, because generally we don't, whatever we think is not what we go and say when we go in front of our Guru Maharaj. It is a common thing which we all face. Same way, he could not ask much, but he understood. Jnanananda Swami is a Mahatma who knows Trikalam, which is all past, present and future. There is another incident where Jnanananda Swami actually said, put 5 more plantain leaves, because in 2 hours some people are going to come to eat, and they came. So he was a very well-known Jnani. He was Jnani par excellence, and he was Sarvagyan. So he knew everything. So this Kiva Jamama, he went to Tapovanam, and he slowly trying to ask. And whenever he asks, Guru Maharaj, what about your charitram? So we all are very eager to listen to your charitram. Can you please tell us? Because it's better to get it from the horse's mouth, right? He's the perfect source. But the problem with these Mahatmas is they are on a higher plane. So when we ask them charitram, they agree with whatever we say. And there's a beautiful example in Ramana Maharshi's story. Ramana Maharshi, one time what happened was somebody was writing a biography of Ramana Maharshi. So this journalist wrote a full book on Ramana Maharshi, and he said, okay, I will, for proofreading, he sent it to Ramana Maharshi himself. This book was written in Malayalam, sent it to Ramana Maharshi himself. And Ramana Maharshi got it and he read it fully, page by page. He checked for grammar, everything. And then there was his Shishya nearby, who is Kunja Swamigal, who was a Malayali himself. He was a Malayalam devotee. His Matrubhasha was Malayalam. And he said, I have proofread this whole thing, you can give it to him. So as this Kunju Swamigal had this affinity, whenever we see, even here, if we see a Tamil poster or a Telugu poster, whatever our Matrubhasha is, if we see a poster in our language, we feel this affinity, right? So we're more attracted to see what that board says or what that information is. Like that, this Kunju Swamigal was also very attracted because his Matrubhasha was Malayalam and this whole biography was written in Malayalam. He glanced over and he got furious because in this article, they wrote everything wrong about Ramanar. They said that he had a wife and he had kids, and he was fuming because my Guru Maharaj left his house at 12-13, such a young boy, and he did tapas, and you have written all of this about him, and he got very angry. And he contained his anger and he asked Ramana Bhagavan, did you proofread it properly, Ramana Bhagavan? He said, yes. Pizhaye illama, which means I checked for grammar in every page, it was written perfectly. He said, yes, there is no wrong in the grammar, but the karuthu, the actual content is fully wrong. Every part of it is wrong. Then Ramana beautifully asked this devotee, appo mei enna? Which means, what is the truth? If this is not the truth and that is not the truth, then what is the real truth? All of these are false to me. This is a very complex statement which Ramana Bhagavan made here. He's basically saying, it doesn't matter what you say about my body. It doesn't matter. You can say that Ramanar had kids, Ramanar had wife, or you can say Ramanar was a Turavi. You can say whatever you want, but it is associated with this body, and I consider this body as mithya. This Jagat, we know that Jagan Mithya Brahma Satyam, right? It's part of the Advaita Siddhantam. So these Mahatmas consider this Jagat itself, this materialistic things itself as Mithya or myth, as we know in English, which is it can be the world is not a lie, but it is a partial truth. So a partial truth is still considered a lie. In lie algebra, you consider partial truth still as a lie. So they consider it as lie. And similarly, in this incident, this Kavi Jagannathan Mama, he goes and asks about the Charitram. He does not give an answer. 3 days he waited, he didn't get any response. And he said, okay, I have work to do, so let me go back to Madras. He was in Chennai at the time. So he said, okay, it is time for me to leave Guru Maharaj's abode and I have to go get back to work. On the last day, he does a namaskaram and he leaves. When he is getting close to his train, he is near the station, a devotee comes running behind and says, Guru Maharaj wants to see you. So he immediately comes running after and he comes. And Jnanananda Swami is actually running. Jnanananda Swami is running with 2 mangoes in his hands to give to this bhakta, because he didn't give him prasadam, it seems. He's running towards this bhakta. He's Avyaja Karunai. He's just like we saw Sadashiva Brahmendra, he was a Jivan Mukta himself. Jnanananda Swami was a Jivan Mukta. He did not have any reason to have attachment towards anybody, but still he cared for them so much. So he was coming with 2 mangoes, and gave it to him and said, Prasadam. He said, Prasadam, okay, and he accepted it. And then he said, I will say this in Tamil and then I will translate it in English. He says, Mambaram, nanna irukku, rusiya irukla. He is asking if he gave some mangoes, ripe mangoes. It was, we can say Alfonso. It was the peak of the summer season, and the mangoes were extremely good around that time. And this was perfect. It was ripe, and he says, "Mambaram nanna irukla, nanna kaninji perikla. It is ripened, right?" He says, "Saapidu." Okay. And then he tells him, மாம்பழம் சாப்பிட்டுருவோம், மாம்பழம் எந்த கனிலேருந்து வந்தது, எந்த மரத்துலேருந்து வந்ததுங்கிறது ஏன் நம்மளுக்கு தெரியணும்? He's saying, you have the mango in hand now. Why don't you enjoy it instead of wondering about which tree this came from, which flower this came from? That is not necessary, right? We always say Rishi Moolam Nadi Moolatha Ariyakuda. We don't need to know that. And the reason Jnanananda Swami himself gives that you don't really need the roots to fully understand the pala. When we get Srimad Bhagavatam itself is a param, right? Pibata Bhagavata Rasamalayam Muguraho Rasikaha Bhuvi Bhavukaha. You get it as a fruit. And when Leela Shukar is describing this fruit, there's Leela Shukar is another Mahatma. And when he's in his Charitram, the way he sees Srimad Bhagavatam is, he's going to this forest and he sees this great tree, this vriksha. It has lots of branches. That tree is Veda. That tree has lots of branches, and in that branch the fruit you see is Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we can do Parayanam of Srimad Bhagavatam, we enjoy Srimad Bhagavatam. But do we all know Vedanta? Do we all know Upanishads? Do we all chant the Vedas? Not necessarily. We don't need to fully understand it, because to relish the fruit you don't need the context, you don't need the background, etc. And Mahatmas are like that. In the case that we don't really understand where they came from or what their roots are. And another example is Sai Baba. We know Shirdi Sai Baba is a great Mahatma. When we look at Shirdi Sai Baba's Charitram, we never see that Sai Baba avadaritar. There is even in his Satcharitra, the Sai devotees, their primary book is the Satcharitra. The Satcharitra is a collection of Leelas. That is how Jnanananda Swami's Charitram is also. It is a collection of Leelas. It is not structured, as I said. And for Sai Baba, the devotees went and asked, Swami, we want to celebrate your Jayanti. When were you born? Very simple question. When were you born? Sai Baba says, what date do you want to keep the Jayanti? You want Navami, Dasami, Ekadasi, Dwadasi? You can keep any day. You can keep any day you want. Normally this doesn't make sense, because the birth date is only one date, right? But then if we look at it if we look at the Moolam, if we see Narayana Avatar, we see Ramar was born in Navami, Krishna was born in Ashtami. We have some calculation for that. But does anyone say what time Narayana was born, what time Shiva was born? There is no calculation for that, because the Jayanti for these Mahatmas, including our Guru Maharaj, is so that we remember them. It has nothing, they don't care about their birthday, because to them the body is just body. It has no connection to what the Atma is. But like that, for our Jnanananda Swami, the devotees asked Jnanananda Swami repeatedly, when was he born? Somehow some people got to know that it was Thai Kritikai, which is, as I said, still not known with full confidence, but Thai Kritikai. And they go ask Swamiji, Jnanananda Swami, they ask Swami, Thai Kritikai la thane avadarichar? Appadiye vechikalame. It means he's just saying you can keep anything as long as you have a day or days where you do smarana of the Guru. It does not matter whether we can understand where the roots came from or where we get the source of the information. So that is Jnanananda Swami, and Bharadiyar actually has a very beautiful quote. As I said, Bharadiyar was a contemporary to Jnanananda Swami, and he says, ஞாயிற்றை சங்கிலியால் அளக்கலாமோ ஞானகுரு புகழினை நாம் வகுக்கலாமோ ஆயிரம் நூல் கூறிடினும் முடிவுறாதாம் ஐயரவன் புகழை நான் சுருங்க சொல்வேன். Bharadiyar was a poet par excellence. There was nothing he could not describe. He had a vivid imagery. Anything we see in a poem, rhythm structure, meter, Bharadiyar was master in everything. And he himself says, Ayaravan Pugal Nan Churunga Cholven. Because it seems talking about Jnanananda Swami's Pugal or his fame and his kirti in its full form was akin to Nyayitrai Sangliyal Alakalamo. Nyayir, we know Nyayitrikkilamai, which is Sunday. So Nyayir is here is sun. So it is as saying that we can fully describe Jnanananda Swami is as good as saying I can measure the sun with a bunch of chains. With small chains, if I say I can measure the diameter of the sun, it is a very, very naive thought, right? Because the sun is so vast and we cannot even imagine the size. And Jnanananda Swami is infinite. As I said, Guru Tattvam itself is infinite because we can never place a time value on it. Guru Tattvam itself is infinite. And now we will see Jnanananda Swami's Leela. So what we are going to see in Jnanananda Swami's Charitram is a very, very small, minuscule amount of the true experiences the Bhaktas had. Because this was, Jnanananda Swami's Charitram was a collection of excerpts from Bhaktas' experiences. So, like in our satsang, if we have Madhura Smaranams, if we imagine everybody's Madhura Smaranam summed up together, that is the collection we have right now of Jnanananda Swami. So, we are going to see as much Yatha Shakti, we are going to see Jnanananda Swami's Katha. It is a very interesting Charitram, and he is a great Mahatma. And not only, the thing is, it's not important that he's a great Mahatma, because Mahatmas are all great. The important thing is how he interacted with his disciples. That is how we can relate, because every single instance where we see the interaction between Jnanananda Swami's disciples and him, we can relate to it because we have a living Guru. We have the fortune of having a living Guru, and we can relate in every step how these experiences are of these Bhaktas. So we will now see Jnanananda Swami's Charitram as much as we can cover over the next few weeks. So first, where was he born? Till now I said that there is no, in full confidence we cannot say it, but what they say is our Swami was born in Mangalapuri. Mangalapuri is in present day Dharwad. It's in Karnataka. And how was it said, or how did they find out is we cannot understand. Some Bhaktas, like we are going to see later, some Bhaktas actually went into a trance and they wrote some of the Charitram of our Jnanananda Maharaj. Once they wrote his Charitram, they did not even see him. So the Bhaktas, who I will mention later, they didn't even see our Jnanananda Swami in flesh. They were not there at his time, but it was all through Anubhavam which they wrote this story, and it has been bestowed by Jnanananda Swami himself, and only what he thinks should be revealed is revealed. So we do not know the completeness, we do not know the story completely, but there was a devotee who wrote Jnanananda Sahasranamam, like how we know Vishnu Sahasranamam. There is a Jnanananda Sahasranamam, and in that we see beautifully it describes most of the summed up experiences of Bhaktas, and it tells us a bit of history of where Swami is from and whether he was born or not. It gives us a history. So in that Sahasranamam it says Karnataka Desha Avataraptre Namaha. There is a Nama, Sadguru Sri Jnananandaya Namaha, Karnataka Desha Avataraptre Namaha. So he was born in Karnataka, and we know that he's from Karnataka through this, and he was a Kannada Smarta, just like our Mahaperiyava. He was also a Kannada Smarta. So there are many interesting kathas of devotees, and one such devotee was Venkatrama Shastrigal. The thing is, I'm getting to this because I said he's a Kannada Smarta, right? So I'll first talk about who a Smarta is, and then we will get into why it matters. So Smarta, if we all know this famous shlokam, Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padashankaram Lokashankaram. Shruti Smriti Purananam. Shruti means that which is heard. Smriti means that which is to be remembered. And then we have our Puranas, the 18 Puranas which we have, Puranas. So Smritis are those that are to be remembered. So those are the Shastras, the Upanishads, Vedanta, whatever is not part of the Veda, but given to us by Rishis, that is the Smritis. And people who worship the Smritigal, or people who abide by the Smritigal, are known as Smartas. Now Smartas, by nature, they have no distinction between certain gods. So we know that there is before Adi Shankara Bhagavadpada's time period, there were 72 madams or religions which portrayed the values of Sanatana Dharma in a wrong way. We wouldn't know Sanatana Dharma as it is today without Bhagavadpada. There were 72 types, and like Vamacharam, which is using Bali Kudukaradu, which is sacrificing animals to Kali. There were many cruel, gory ways of worshipping. So our Bhagavadpada was the first one, who was the Samsthana Stapakar, who actually partitioned the Brahma Tattvam into 6 categories. So the 6 categories is still important, because what the Mahans want to do is give us the easiest path possible to attain the highest, the Brahma Tattvam. Because the Brahma Tattvam is Anirvachaniyam, and the Brahma Tattvam is Sarvajnam, and it is all encompassing, right? So this Brahma Tattvam, we do not need, it's the forms we have is just so that we can enjoy the Brahma Tattvam. That doesn't mean the Brahma Tattvam is contained in that form. In Vedanta, there is a very, very popular example, which is about the Gata Akasham and Akasham. So when we talk about Gata Akasham, Akasham, as we know, is space, right? We know Akashat Vayu Vayor Agni Agner Apa of Prithvyam. We know that Akasham is space. And that space, if we see, for example, if this cup was empty, normally 99% of the people, what they will say is, if this cup was empty, this cup is empty. That is what the description they will give. But the cup is not empty. Nothing is ever empty, because there is always Akasham everywhere. What is actually stopping the space from being one space? So because there is here if we see, there is a cup subspace, and there is the actual space, which is Akasham. So what is actually stopping it is this cup. So for example, if this cup breaks, this Akasham and that Akasham are now the same. We don't see it like if the cup breaks, the Akasham actually moves like water or air. There is no fluid movement. Akasham is existent everywhere. It is just the form we contain it in which is different. Like that, for Adi Shankara Bhagavadpada established 6 matas, as we know. It is Shaivam, Vaishnavam, and doing the worship of Surya Bhagavan, doing the worship of Ambal. There are 6 such traditions which they follow. Doing the worship of Subramanya, which is our Muruga Perumal. So there were 6 traditions. And Smartas, why I brought this up is, Smartas have no distinction between these things. And most of the katha we're going to see shows that. So one time what happened was Jnanananda Swami had many disciples across many traditions. They were not confined to one tradition or one socio-economic strata or anything. They were of varied socio-economic strata and varied backgrounds, varied upbringings, etc. They were not from anything similar. So one incident happens where the bhaktas are actually, there is a rumor that is spreading that Swami is a Shaiva at heart, and then Swami is a Vaishnava at heart, and this is circulating. And then there is this one lady who really wants to know whether Swami is a Shaiva or Swami is a Vaishnava. So she goes, and in our Swami, he is ever changing. The bhaktas say, according to their experience, Swami doesn't even remain in the same color every day. Sometimes he shows himself in a gold color, sometimes he's in a red color, sometimes he shows himself in the regular human color. Even his color is ever changing, and it is more complex because it is not ubiquitous, it is separate for each individual. I may view him in a different form, you may view him in a different form. So this bhakta, she goes and she wants to see whether Swami is a Vaishnava or Shaiva by the markings in the forehead. Generally, all Mahatmas, you can identify their tradition by what markings they have. So Shaiva will have the Vibhuti, Pattai, they will have the Pattai, and Vaishnavas will have Tiruman, or the Namam which we see. So she was a Vaishnava herself. So she wanted Swami to be a Vaishnava. She goes, and Swamiji is having a Ottai, which means we know that Sri Charanam, right? It is red in color. He has that Ottai as that one marking. She goes and she is very happy that Swamiji is definitely Vaishnava. Now this has resolved the debate. She does namaskara and she gets up and he has a pattai. So in the span of not even 1 or 2 seconds, she does a namaskara and gets up, and now he has a pattai. She does namaskara, gets up again, now he has an ottai. So that is to show that Swami was not bound by any form or name or anything. He was the Purna Brahma Tattvam himself, and he showed himself to his devotees as they wished. So whatever their Ishta Devata is, he showed himself as that. This Katha we are going to see is about Venkatrama Shastrigal. Venkatrama Shastrigal was a great Mahatma, and his Diksha Namam was Lalitananda Nathar. His guru was Shyamanandar, and Shyamanandar's guru was none other than Ramakrishna Paramahamsar himself. So this Lalitananda Nathar's Paramaguru was Ramakrishna Paramahamsar himself. So he was very indulged in Ambal worship, and he was an Ambal Upasaka, and he used to do incessant puja of Ambal, and he used to do a lot of Chandi Homams. He had his some disciples, and they used to do Chandi Homams and Sahasra Chandi, Shata Chandi. We have heard they do Homa for Ambal, and he's an Ambal Upasaka. So what happens is he did not even see Swamiji. So this is after this incident which I am going to talk about is after Jnanananda Giri Maharaj attained Siddhi, still living, not in his Stula form. So it is not in his human form. So this is after. So Tapovanam is undergoing the Kumbhabhishekam, Adhisthana Kumbhabhishekam. They are redoing it. They redo it every 10 or 20 years, I think, the Kumbhabhishekam for temples. Just like that, for the Adhishtanam, there was a Kumbhabhishekam going on. And for this Kumbhabhishekam, they invited this Lalitananda Nathar, because he was a very great Ambal Upasaka. So they invited him to do the Chandi Home for that particular Kumbhabhishekam. So he came, and he came from Madras again. And Tapovanam is pretty far from Madras. And in this time period, there was no mode of transport as we know today. So cars were not as prevalent, and trains and buses were pretty infrequent. And Tapovanam was a very small village. It was in a village environment, so there was not much. So he came, and it was night time by the time he came. He left Madras around afternoon, and it was around night time. Then he realizes that the Murti, the Meru which he has for puja every day. So all of us have this, for doing daily puja we have a Swami, right, in all of our houses. Small Vigraham we have, all of us. His Vigraham was this Meru, and he left that at home. So Lalita Nandanathar left his daily puja vigraham at home. And he was shocked by this because he was a very, very staunch Ambal devotee, and he did not skip even one day of doing his daily puja, daily ablutions. It was part of his ritual. So he was very, very startled, and he said, "Ippave Kalamana, I have to leave right now. I have to leave Tapovanam." He has to do this homam in the morning, and we know homams happen very early in the morning. He had to do homam in the morning, and this is around midnight. This, whatever I'm saying, is around midnight. He is realizing that he left his Meru at home. He's saying, "I have to go. I have to go right now." And these bhaktas near him, they console him and they tell him that, "Swami, it is not possible. If you have to go right now, you have to walk all the way. There is no way you can reach there or come back in time. We will ask someone, we will call someone in Madras and ask them to bring." He says, no, it is my upasana devam. Only I can touch it. Only I can bring it. And he is very, very adamant on it. And they console him finally, because it was logistically very hard to reach Madras at that point in time. So he is very, very dejected, and he goes to Navaratri Mandapam. In Tapovanam, there is this Mandapam called Navaratri Mandapam. And there he is resting. He cannot sleep because his puja vigraham is at home. He cannot sleep. And he's closing his eyes, trying to sleep, just trying to get slight sleep. And he's closing his eyes when he feels someone touch him. Someone's touching him and waking him up. When he wakes up, he sees Pratyakshama, he sees that Ambal, who he has been doing the upasana of, in the form of Jnanananda. So, Jnanananda, there are many deities. If we go to Tapovanam, there is Jnanambikai, Jnana Ganesha, Jnana Venkadasalapati. There are many deities. According to whatever the Ishta Devata is, they go and worship. He showed himself here as Ambal herself. So then he understood that we came nowhere other than the abode of our beloved Ishta Devata herself. And he did not go back after that. He stayed in Tapovanam. He did not even go back home. He realized that this was where he was supposed to go, and he attained wherever he had to go. So he never left after that. And that is how great our Jnanananda Swami is. And then if we have read Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's Bhaktas, there was a very, very famous Mahatma called Anna. It's not to be confused with our Shishya Anna. This Anna is Anna Subramanya Iyer. He was a great Mahan, and he was also an Ambal Upasaka. He has tremendous bhakti towards Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And the slokam I said earlier, the Mandasmita Mukambojam, he wrote for Jnanananda Swami, that Mandasmita Mukambojam, he wrote a word by word for each word in that slokam. He wrote Vyakhyanam. This and Subramanya Iyer Swami was the one who actually wrote the Vyakhyanam. And his Upasana Devi was Lalita Parameshwari. The Upasana deity was Lalita Parameshwari. And again, this was after Jnanananda left his Stula Shariram. He actually felt, so he was, as I said, he was a Ramakrishna Bhakta. And as he was doing Upasana, one time, he saw Jnanananda. He's doing Upasana and he saw Jnanananda and he saw Ambal, who is Lalita Parameshwari herself. And he saw both of them simultaneously as one. And then he realized how great Jnanananda Swami was. And there are many such incidents where we see that our Jnanananda gives everybody darshana as they please. Whoever their deity, Ishta Devata is, he gives them darshana as that. So he was great. And we get back to his charitram. He was born to Vengopa Ganapadigal and Sakubai. So Vengopa Ganapadigal was his father and Sakubai was his mother. And we have some pramana for this. So in the Jnanananda Sahasranamam, which I said, and other ashtotrams of Jnanananda Swami, there is a particular Namavali which says Vengopa Shrotriyatmana. So it says Vengopa Shrotriyatmana. So this Vengopa, if we see, Vengopa's character. So Vengopa was great. He was a great Mahan himself. And when we see his charitram, his Shravana, his Manana, his Nididhyasana, everything was perfect. And we can draw some parallels here, because when we see Bhagavan Sri Krishna, before Bhagavan Sri Krishna was did his avataram, he did not just pick them randomly. And we see a pramana for this. So Bhagavan is known as Gita Acharyan, right? Because he gave us the Bhagavad Gita. There we see this in his father when he is giving a discourse to Kamsa. So what is happening is, when this Anaka Dundubi, who is our Vasudevar, was married to Devaki Mata, they were going on a chariot and Kamsa was the one driving it. And then we know that Ashariri said the eighth Garbha of Devaki is the one who is going to kill you. And his reaction completely changed. He changed from being a charioteer to almost killing his sister. And our Vasudeva stops him and he gives him a discourse of why this body is different, why is Atma different, and what is Atma, what is Paramatma. He gives this discourse. Just the same topics which Bhagavan later elaborates, Vasudeva already gave it there. So we see that these Mahatmas, when they pick, not like us, when they are born, they pick their parents when they do avataram. And Jnanananda Swami, as I said, is eternal. So he had no birth time. He was they got him from a forest, just like we know our Charangadevar from our Jnaneshwar Maharaj Charitram. There is no certain birth date or when he passed away. There is no information on that. We know that he's a great yogi. He's the one who we see the story of the wall. Charangadevar is riding on a tiger, and Jnaneshwar Maharaj tells a wall to go. That Charangadevar, he's also, we cannot tell where he was born. He was just Tondrinar, that's the right word. He just appeared. And Tondrinar, and then our Andal Devi. Andal Devi also, we know that our Periyar picked her up from this Nandavanam, this garden. She was not born. Even our Sita Mata, they say that when they were plowing, they found Sita Mata. There is no description in Ramayana that Sita Mata was born in a human fashion. Like that, our Jnanananda Swami, he chose his parents to be Vengopa Ganapadigal, and Vengopa Ganapadigal, as I said, is deserving, or I should say, Jnanananda Maharaj picked him because he was that great of a Mahatma. So he had all the gunas, and so did his mother. And his mother Sakubai, there is a pramanam that in Jnana Inbavadi, say there's a Kummiyadi. We know we have a Kummiyadi Penne Kummiyadi Sadgurunathan Bogar Padi Kummiyadi. As we have a song for Kummiyadi, which ladies do. Just like that, they in the Jnanananda Sampradayam also they have this Kummi. And in that it says Mangalapuri in Selva Nadi Mangai Sakuvanan Bana Maindanadi. So Sakubai is mentioned there. So Sakubai is the Mata, the mother of our Jnanananda Maharaj. So how they got him? There is a time when a devotee asks Jnanananda Swami, Swami inga parandel? So they are asking, Swami, where were you born? Swami replies, Swami parakaliye. So he says, Swami was not born. Then the Bhakta, realizing what they said, they change their question and they say, Swami eppa avadarichel? So that is a valid question, because avadarikkiradu means they descended. Does not mean they were part of this samsara or anything. They descended for some other purpose. Swami replies, அவதரிக்கிறதுனா மேலேந்து கீழே வருது, சுவாமி மேலேயும் போல கீழேயும் வரல, அதனால அவதரிக்கவும் இல்லை. ஸோ இஸ் சேயிங் அவதரிக்கிறது, the term அவதரித்தான், when you say அவதரித்தான் கண்ணன், அவதரிக்கிறது means they were at a higher abode and then they brought themselves down. So Jnanananda Swami is saying, no, I didn't go from a lower loka to higher or came from a higher loka. I am eternally existing. That Sarvajñatvam is displayed here. Says I am ever existing. And then Jnanananda Swami himself gives a description. He says, Swami udichidu. So the example is, when we see the sun, when we show our kids the sun, the first time the kid sees the sun, they say in the morning the sun comes and in the night the sun goes away. Sun doesn't go anywhere. Sun is stationary, as we know from physics. Sun is stationary. Sun doesn't go away. It is just our earth rotating that we are experiencing that phenomena. So to say that a Mahatma is existing or not existing based on we seeing them with their Sthula Sharira is not a good way to see it. It's a very childish way to see it. Udikkirathu here just means you see me in the Sthula form. Udikkirathu, I have risen. That is like the sun. You see me now. Later you don't see me. That is just my Sthula form. I am always existent. And that is what our Jnanananda Swami gives us the accurate description for himself, or to describe him, because he was as I said, Brahma Tattvam himself. And the way this couple got Jnanananda Swami is, we know Kokke Subramanya Swami near Udupi. There's a very famous temple called Kokke Subramanya. They prayed to that Subramanya, a very beautiful temple. The Swami, the Muruga Swami, has a Digbhujam, and he is also worshipped as Naga Subramanya in that kshetra. It is a very good kshetra. If we can go visit, it is a very good kshetra, and that kshetra is where this couple go for wanting a child. They actually had an elder son, who we will see a bit later in the Charitra. They had a elder son, and there was a very long gap between Jnanananda Swami and his elder brother. So they were praying for another child, and Jnanananda Swami Tondrinar, he appeared, and they were raising him. So they were raising him as they gave him the Namakaranam. So when we do samskaras, so there are lots of samskaras, or should say rituals. There is not a perfect English translation. So samskaras are what we do, traditions. So there are some traditions which you have to follow once a child is born, or any sort of activity which is involved with life, such as death. There is a samskara for everything. There is a samskara for Namakaranam. There is a samskara called Jata Karma. And we see all this in Vishnu Smriti, Manu Smriti. We see all of this samskaras. So they did the Namakaranam, and he was called Subramanya because they prayed to this Kokke Subramanya Swami. His Purvacharya name his Purvashrama name was Subramanya. So this Subramanya was growing up, and the way they describe it is, we see in Brahmavataram, there is a story where Dasharatha asks Rama to go forward, walk back, go forward again and walk back, just to witness the beauty of the child. And all of these kathas we see, the Mahatma, the Avadara Purusha or Bhagavan himself, they give so much joy to their parents. It's not like, they're serious and they grow up and all they're doing is giving pravachanam. They are very, they make their parents enjoy having them as a child. So here in the Sahasranama it says, Bala Keli Samutsukaha. They say that Jnanananda Swami gave so much joy. If we ask the devotees of Jnanananda Swami will enjoy this even more, because even when Jnanananda Swami, we see his Rupam here, right? This is how almost everybody has seen him as. This is the Rupam which almost everybody has seen him as. And even in this Rupam, he plays like a child with everybody. So Jnanananda Swami, if he plays like this in a relatively older Rupam, imagine him when he was small. So he was Bala Keli Samutsukaha. He gave so much joy to his parents. And then Swami was around 5 years old, and Swami's Balya Parva was about done. Swami was sent to a school. To study his Matrubhasha. Matrubhasha being Kannada. So Swami was sent to a school to study his Matrubhasha. One Bhakta actually asked Swami later that, Swami, have you studied? Swami, have you studied any school? Have you done any schooling? And Swami replied, Swamiki படிப்பு வாசனையே கிடையாது, சொல்றதெல்லாம் பூர்வ ஜென்ம வாசனை. That means whatever he's saying is he's basically saying that he's not bound by anything like vasanas, or he doesn't have to acquire that knowledge. Even when we see, when he goes to the Gurukula, like our Bhagavan Sri Krishna did with our Sandipani, like our Bhagavan Ramachandra Prabhu did with Vasishta, they went to Padasala not because they had to acquire the knowledge. They already know everything. They are Sarvagyan themselves, so they don't need to really learn anything. It is to show us that we can only get this if we live with a guru and we do kainkaryam to the guru. That's how we learn. And even in our Ramanujacharya story, when he's learning the Dvaya Mahamantram, we know the shloka, Tatvidif Pranipadena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadekshanti Te Jnanam Jnaninaha Tattvadarshinaha. It is, you will not attain that jnanam without doing service to a Mahatma. Ananda Swami does this later, we'll see. So, like that, the knowledge which he has is unbound. The schooling and all is just to have a human touch. Because even in our Bhagavan Sri Krishna's Charitram, Bhagavan Sri Krishna always used to cover himself with vennai or butter. Everybody, normally, when we look at it, all of the Leelas, by the way, in Srimad Bhagavatam, they are not universal in the sense, they are universal in the sense that anybody of any age can enjoy it. If a child looks at Navanita Chauryam, it is a different perspective from what a Mahatma looks at it as. It has various levels of looking at it. So, simple explanation for why Bhagavan covers himself with butter is Bhagavan likes butter. That is a simple explanation, and Bhagavan does not want to take showers, as we know. And we think that, that is because Krishnan Valadina, he does not like shower. We don't consider it much. But the actual reason is because if he does not cover himself with that butter, his Sarvagyattvam and his actual original form as the Brahma Tattvam will come out. That's why he is always covering himself with butter. So like that, our Jnanananda Swami is now going to school. He is 5 years old and he is going to school to learn his Matribhasha. So Jnanananda Swami goes to learn his Matribhasha, goes to school, and he becomes 7 years old. And at 7 years old is when they do the Upakarma ceremony. So Jnanananda Swami himself describes it, because one Bhakta asks him, what is the significance of this Poonal or the sacred thread? Why do we have that ceremony? They asked him this question. And Swami replied, Nannul karpadu nandru, adilum sirandadu tannul, adarku podapadum nool poonul, which is Poonal. He says that Nannul karpadu nandru. Nool has many meanings in Tamil. Nool means grantha, or some sort of work, and nool means thread. So he's saying Nannul karpadu nandru. It is good to know these texts. Adinilum sirandadu tannul. Tannul here is referring to the tradition which you have to follow. For that, adarku podapadum nool poonul. We see this importance of this Poonal even in Jnaneshwara Maharaj's Katha, because all of them were Brahmagyani. The purpose of this Poonal is so that they can start doing Brahma Vichara. When we say Brahmana, it is whoever wants to attain this Brahma Tattva, they are called Brahmana. And this Poonal is basically like a gateway for that. Which is why Jnaneshwara Maharaj, even though there were four of them were Brahmagyanis, he still wanted the world to follow the tradition. That's why he has this Poonal. So at that time, this Upakarma ceremony happens, and Swami is a Rigveda Shaka. So when we know about these shakas, there are 4 shakas or 4 branches. You have the Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda. Atharvana Veda is we don't see it much, or we don't see it at all in contemporary world. But basically there are 3 Vedas in which most of the people are. And Swami was a Rigvedi. And Jnanananda Sahasranamam says Rigveda Shakadhyayi cha Gayatri Japa Tatparaha. From this we see that Swami is a Rigvedi. But when Swamiji went to this Patashala, he was learning all the Vedas. He was the son of a Ganapadigal. So just by that listening, because his father used to chant the Vedas every day, he knew everything. Of course he was a Sarvagyan, so he did not need to learn, but he went again to show us. So when he goes to this Patashala, it does not have any natam, which I translated as, it does not have interest. It's not interest, it's alignment. He wasn't aligned with what the Patashala curriculum was. Patashala curriculum, as I said, what they do is, first they teach, and the Vadyar repeats it once, you repeat that line twice, you do this 3 times. Once you do this, you go outside, you practice, come back, you recite to them, then you do Tiruvai. Tiruvai, as I said, is you repeat it for 100 times in a cycle of a fortnight. You do this. Jnanananda Swami was not doing any of this. He used to listen. He used to sit in the class. He used to listen to his Vadyar chant, and he used to listen and not say anything. So these Vadyars did not know. That he was Sarvagyan. But all they knew is he was some irresponsible child and he did not want to study Vedas. But what actually happened to Swami is, when you start off Veda, any Veda mantram you say, when we even say Chaturvedyam, we say, if we are saying the Chaturvedam, we say Harihi Om Isheto Jetpavaya Vasto. So we say the Harihi Om. Before anything, if you have to start Panchadi or any part of the Veda, you have to say this Harihi Om. This Om itself was enough to put Swamiji into a different state. When he listened to that itself, that Harinamam and that Pranavakaram, he already went into Samadhi. He did not listen to the rest of it, he did not need to listen to the rest of it. So, everybody thought that Swami does not know Veda, because all of his classmates used to do it properly. They used to do it according to the rules. They used to practice and come. Swami did not do anything. He used to sit there, listen, come back. And no matter how many times the Vadyar asked him, he did not reply. He used to just sit calmly. And this is the sign of Jivan Mukta. As Prasad was saying earlier, if we see our Jadabharadar Charitram, Bharata Yogeshwara was his previous avataram. Because he lost sight of his goal, when he becomes Jadabharadar, we all know the Katha, as when he becomes Jadabharadar, he remains quiet the whole period. Until he talks to his Shishya, he is quiet that whole period. Because he does not want anything to affect him. So Jnanananda Swami, similarly, he was in a very great state of Samadhi. Even Mahatmas like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, since I have this glass of water, I remember, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, before going to Samadhi, he used to go into Samadhi so often that it was kind of unsustainable, because he was running a madam, he had to do work, but he always, his manam, it was always beyond this plane. We see astral plane and every other plane, it always ascended higher. So what he used to do is, he used to think of a very basic thing, like, oh, I have this cup of water next to me. That was his cue for coming out of Samadhi. That's why I'm saying he used to use those kind of cues, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So like that, Jnanananda Swami used to go into Samadhi all the time. And by this, can we say that Jnanananda Swami does not know Vedam? No, because the Rajarajeshwari Peedam, many people know, it is in Bangalore, Rajarajeshwari Peedam. The Peedadipati was Tiruchi Swamigal. He lived about few years back. He also attained Siddhi, but around 1982-1983, he was living, and at that time, Balaji Bhagavat, who was actually one of the first people, Guru Maharaj himself said, is the first person to actually fully deliver a discourse on Jnanananda Swami. Because before that, as I said, it was only excerpts which people knew. The first person who did it fully was Balaji Bhagavat, who Guru Maharaj himself said. So he actually met this Tiruchi Swamigal, and Tiruchi Swamigal asked him, do you know how good of Vedi your Gurunadhar was? You know how good he was with reciting Veda? And he said, no Swami, I didn't have the Bhagyam. He says, don't think that your Gurunadar does not know Vedam. He was a Ganapati par excellence. He just didn't reveal it to others. But he was a Ganapati par excellence. So, in coming back, this Vadyar got very angry because he did not do anything. They just thought he didn't understand nor practice. He got everything. He grasped everything, but they just thought that. So, one time Vadyar got very angry and he says, பிள்ளையார் மாதிரி கம்முன்னு இருக்கே நீ பேசாம பிள்ளையார் கோவிலே போய் உட்காந்துக்கோங்க. So I'm saying this word gum because of the significance. So the Vadyar tells him, you are sitting so quietly with Shanti like Pillayar. We always say he's in this pose where he's very very calm, right? He says, if you're showing action like Pillayar, why don't you go? The Gammaniri itself, the origin of that word, which we colloquially use, that gum is derived from Pillayar. It is a bija aksharam of Ganapati. So when we say gum Ganapati Nama, that gum is, it signifies Shanti, which is why in colloquially we say Gammaniri means you have to keep quiet, you have to maintain Shanti. Okay, so whatever his guru said, he immediately obeyed. Okay, you want me to go to Pillayar Koil? I will go there. And he sits in this Pillayar Koil. And he does not come. He does not attend any more Veda Padasala sessions. This has been happening for a while. And then what happens is, as we know, there is a period when you are not supposed to recite the Vedas. In a year, there is a period when you are not supposed to recite the Vedas. And at that time it's generally a week off or 10 days off for those Padashala people. So his Anna, his brother, comes to visit Jnanananda or Subramanian. He comes to visit Subramanian, searches for him all throughout the Padashala and he's nowhere to be seen. Then he asks his Vadyar, what happened? Why is he not here? Is he gone outside? He says, Subramania does not attend any of the sessions. He's like Jadam, he does not react, he does not respond, he does not practice. So I told him, if you are like this, you can go sit in Pillayar Koil, and he's been there. So Sanna goes there and he's fuming with anger because his father was a great Ganapati. So his reputation was at stake and he was not doing whatever karma he was supposed to do, which is what he thought. Karma does not affect Mahatmas. Karma itself leaves Mahatmas. When we look at Karma Yoga, first step is doing karma, which we do normally. Then comes Karma Yogam, which is we do karma without the palan. We do the parityagam of the karma. And then comes Karma Sannyasam. Karma Sannyasam does not mean I leave the karma. It means the karma leaves me. In this case, the karma left Jnanananda Swami, which they didn't realize. So Sanna goes, this brother goes and he's very very angry and he shouts. He finds him at this Pillayar Koil and he shouts at him and reprimands him and he beats him too. He hits him and there are many. The hits him is not is something many people have recorded. Armuga Pattar and Suddhananda Bharadiyar, many people have written charitram of whatever they know of Jnanananda Swami, and in all of that is given that his brother actually hit him and they could not bear it. It's just like that Jagadodarana Adisidala Shode. So in that you see Purandaradasar is lamenting that Yashoda, you are hitting the Brahma Tattvam. He is Purna Brahma Sanatanam himself in this Neelameghala Shyamala form, and you are hitting him without knowing who he is. Same way, here everybody, the devotees lament that such a great Mahatma is Jnani, you are hitting him in this state. But what we need to know is, this is not something like it happens in our day-to-day life. It is not like we getting angry. Mahatma, Jnanananda or Ramanar, anybody. Ramanar's case also a very similar thing happened where around 12-13, Ramanar was going to school and he did not really get good marks or anything because his mind was not aligned with that, right? His mind was not aligned with that. So what Ramana did was he was constantly in the thought of Atma Vicharam, and his brother came in one day and he said, if you want to be like this, you can go out of the house, and he left. And what we have to see is, in both of these scenarios, they use this reprimand of their relations as a vyajam. Vyajam means a cause. They use this as a cause to continue their avatara karyam, because if they get entangled with the avatara, if they get entangled with their bandhus and their relations, they cannot continue their avatara karyam. So he uses this as a vyajam to leave. And because of this Shakti Nipadam, Swami leaves Mangalapuri where he was, and they say that Dwadashadve Grihatyagi Gurvan Veshana Tatparaha. So our Subramanya is still Purvashrama. Swami got the urge to attain the purpose of life, and so he leaves. So Jnananda Swami always says Piravi Payane Adaya Vendum. He repeatedly says that, and asks everyone to that they focus on what is the ultimate purpose of life. And here he is about to go on that journey. And Swami in his Amuda Morigal, there's a Gantha called Amuda Morigal, which Jnananda has given, and in that he asks everyone, Ihathirka, Parathirka, Irittirka, Velichathirka, Udalukka, Uyirukka, Uyirukka, Anmavirka. So he's asking a lot of questions based on self-realization, because these are the questions he had. So, Ihathirka, Parathirka, what is the purpose? To stay in this samsara, Ihathirka, you have to go higher or attain a higher state, Parathirka. Then Irittirka, Velichathirka, are you going to remain in this darkness called Ajnana, or are you going to ascend to this Velichathirka? Velicham means light. Are you going to ascend to this Velicham called Jnana? And then Udalukka, Uyirukka. This we see time and again with the Jivan Muktas. And Sadashiva Brahmendra, there is a beautiful example for this. Udalukka, Uyirukka. He was walking one day and somebody cut off his hand, and he kept walking. He did not even realize that it was his hand. And later when the person realized how great he was, came and gave it to him, and profusely crying, he did a namaskaram and said, Swami, it was my fault. He took the hand and he attached it back himself. So with these Jivan Muktas, the Udalukka, Uyirukka is very different. Udalukka, Uyirukka, we can see a common example is, we see this famous phrase, right? Live to eat or eat to live. So live to eat is Udalukka. We are just following whatever our body wants. That is Udalukka. Or Uyirukka. Uyir is different, because we see that this Udal remains even after the Uyir or the Pranan, the life force, goes away from the body. The body has nothing to do with the life force. So, are you going to focus on the body and live like animals or cats or dogs, or are you actually going to use your life properly? And then lastly, he asks, Uyirukka, Anmavirka. He takes it one step higher. He asks, okay, Uyirukka means you're just sustaining because you have to, but are you doing that just for material pleasure, or are you doing that to realize the Atma, which is Paramatma? Because in Upanishads, there's a very famous Vakyam which says, Purnavidam, there is a Vakyam called Purnamada Purnamidam. In that Vakyam, it's a very complicated concept. It says that Brahman is infinite. So that we all know, Brahman is infinite. But if you take a part of that Brahman, so Paramatma, so there is two things here, Jivatma and Paramatma. So this Jivatma is the sentient soul and Paramatma is the super soul. So when the sentient soul is broken off from super soul, for this example we will view them as two separate things. But in actuality, in Advaita Siddhantam, they are one and only. There is only Paramatma and everything else is Mithya. That is what Jagan Mithya Brahma Satyam is. But if there are two separate things, this Atma and Paramatma, Atma, it does not mean that if I have this roti and I took a piece of it, the roti's amount diminishes, right? It's not 100% anymore because I took a piece. But from the Brahma Tattvam, if you take a piece, the piece is also infinite and the Brahman is also infinite. That is why he is saying, Virka, Anma Virka. When you self-realize that Atma, the Atma is also infinite and the Paramatma is also infinite. So, what are you living for is what he is asking. And with these questions, this child called Subramanya follows a Jyoti. He sees this Jyoti which is guiding him to Pandaripuram, where that is where he will see his Guru Maharaj for the first time, Sivaratnagiri Maharaj. And Pandari, this is Mahans call this part, this part of the Charitram as a communion of Jyotis, because Jnanananda Swami is a Jyoti himself. He is going to this bigger Jyoti called Sivaratnagiri, which is his Guru Maharaj, and he is going to the Jyoti Kshetram of Pandaripuram for this. So that's why they call it the communion of Jyotis. And next week we will see how Jnanananda Swami met his Guru Maharaj for the first time. Sadgurunatha Maharaj ki Jai.